Boots O'Neill's my uncle, and he's getting kind of old now, but he's a guy that's punched cows his whole life.
Boots is a character, and everybody that knows him knows that.
Boots is smart, and he's done it all, and he's earned his keep, and he's a good guy, and he's a good teacher, and he teaches a bunch of young kids. And
Boots has taught me a lot of things. He's taught me to be tough and keep going and don't quit.
And that comes from the time frame that he grew up, and not many people are like that anymore, but he is sure enough a gentleman, and he dances really good. He likes to dance within all the women, and yeah, he does like to charm them a little bit, I think, even in his old age. But yeah, he's a good, respectful man.
Boots is also, he surprises me from time to time because he's very, very nice about complimenting me. I'm sure he does other people as well, but he's very, always been very edifying.
I'd like when me and Boots spend about 5 or 6 hours sitting on the porch listening to him tell old stories about the good old days, and I learn more from just listening to him sit around on the porch and talk than I have from anybody else or anything.
I went to work in 1949 for a big cow outfit punching cows, and have been doing that ever since. So I've got 62 years that we've been doing this thing, and when I first started working with the big ranches, while the wagons stayed out for 7 and 8 months at a time, that you lived and stayed with those wagons, and as opposed to now, why, even where we're using a wagon, they usually come in of a night, or every 2 or 3 nights while they come in, or there'll be a motor vehicle there. And when I first started punching cows, why, you pulled all them wagons with horses, and there wouldn't be any way to leave it of a night, like run in and come back. Families didn't have any money at that time, you know, just a living, you know, and they, kids, I think children now are blessed with so much more, and nearly everyone has a car, and then, why, they just a family like ours, there was 8 of us children, and mother and dad, and you know, it's just in a survival mode most of the time, you know, and we didn't go trips. I don't ever remember going with my mother and dad and all us going to a restaurant and going in and sitting down and eating, you know. You just didn't do that. You didn't have that kind of money. But we were on a ranch, and everything throughout my life has been geared for a ranch, you know. The people that I've been associated with was cowboys or ranch people that was interested in ranching.
I think he was at Wagner's or at the Jays, one of them, and he was a younger guy, and he was driving the hood wagon when they were moving camp, and he was rolling the smoke, and he'd just gotten on there and working, and he was rolling him a cigarette, and they dropped the lines, and the horses ran off, and they run off across the river, and everybody's bedrolls and teepees and stuff got wet, and all their clothes and stuff, and Boots was sure that he was going to get fired, but the old man he said the old man was a nice guy and never said a word to him, and they just gathered everything up and went on, and he stayed there for a long time.
For the Wagner Ranch right below here, 24 years, and was a ranch foreman there for several years, and I had a bronc pen, they call the bronc pen, and where we kept 5 or 6 men, and I lived there 11 years and run that, and then moved to headquarters and was the ranch foreman for 8 years, and then 2 or 3 years before that I just worked there as a cowboy at the thing, and then I worked as I started out, I went to work for the JAs there in the Palo Duro Canyon in 49 that I mentioned a while ago, and then went from there to the Matadors, which was up on the Canadian River, and they were both all like 3 times the size of the 4-6 ranch here now, so they were real big ranches at that time, and they'd have a big crew of cowboys, and paid most of them about $90 to $100 a month, and you worked. Say up until '66, we worked 6 days a week. I remember it's in '66, the ranch manager called me. I had a crew, and told me that we was going to take off Saturday evening and Sunday that week, and we'd see how it worked out. And they've been doing it ever since. I was in the Army for 2 years, and I went to Korea. And then I worked 4 years as an inspector for the Cattle Raisers Association, where I had a special Texas Ranger commission and worked in this area right here. And when I quit and went back to work for the ranch, well, Lottie's granddad took my place, and he worked for him then the rest of his life, you know. So, but I've been 44 years with Wagner's in here out of my life. You know, and I've never done anything but work. That's as looking back, if I had any regrets, it'd be my daughter tells me, and she's a school teacher in Vernon, has a master's degree in Spanish education, and she tells me that I never did learn how to play because we just worked all the time, and we didn't go to the lake on the weekends and have a boat and that sort of thing like her and her husband. And I've been with them a time or two on the weekend or something, and I remember one time I got jumping up and down hollering we was doing something, and my son-in-law run and said, "Everybody get out here and watch this, Boots is having fun." But I've had fun every day of my life. You know, my job, I look forward to going to work every morning, and like now I could retire anytime I wanted to, you know, but I like people dread what's going to do tomorrow. I never dread what we're going to do, and I look forward to going to work every morning. And I told a young lady that interviewed me here a few years ago for the Dallas Morning News. I told her that sometimes I wished I had already slept and we was going to do what we're going to do tomorrow. She said she'd never seen anybody with a job like that.
Also has another saying that I like to hear him say many times if something surprises him or he's excited, he says, "Gosh, oh ziggity." And so a lot of times I will say that in class, and my kids are like, "What?" What Uncle Boots always says, "Gosh, oh ziggity." So we thought that was funny.
We'll be sitting on the porch up there, and we'll all be, when there's a true here or something, like when me and Drew Timmons and Pat Butler and Ty Fox and Quentin Daniel and everybody worked here together one summer. We'd all sit on the porch and we'd all type out a text message and send it to Boots, and they'd say the same thing, and his phone would start going off, and he'd wake up, he'd be sleeping up there. He'd wake up and say, "Hot ziggity, got a text message." He'd ask us how to reply, and it said our names, but he didn't know how to do it. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, one day it was raining and we were out weaning calves, and well, it started raining really hard, so we come up and got in the bunkhouse and we were playing poker, and Boots was just telling all these stories, and I don't know why, but he was making me laugh. It was funny because he would just sit there and he'd tell a story, and then everybody'd laugh, and then before everybody even got done laughing, he'd already be telling another one. It was just funny.
Pretty good to listen to him. He's telling stories about back there in the 50s, right dang went back there on the river.
Grew up on a ranch in the Panhandle, and we didn't have electricity, and we didn't have hot water in the house, you know, and they didn't have heat in the bedrooms and stuff. You're just in the living room and the kitchen, you know, and the bedrooms were the same temperature as the world, you know. But we bathed in a wash tubs in front, and got them in front of the kitchen stove because that was the warmest place in the house, and you could open the oven and it would be warm, and you heated the water on the stove right there, and you put it in this tub and bathe, and there'd be, like kids, there'd be 2 or 3 of us bathe in the same tub of water, and then you'd carry it, throw it out the back door, and they'd fix another one. And we of course didn't have television, or that was before television, and I never even heard of television when I was y'all's age. I didn't have any idea.
Things have changed from then and now. Well, I sure it's funny when I'm sitting at home and Boots calls me and asks me how come his TV won't turn on, or what channel is the bull riding on, or what channel is something on, or something he wants to watch. He ain't real sure how to get there, so I'll have to tell him how to get there, or how to turn his TV on or whatever.
But we did, I remember we got a radio, and we'd all gather around that thing overnight and listen to certain programs, just like we gather around and listen to television now. We'd get in the living room and get in there, and Dad would get that thing on. We'd listen, had certain programs on certain nights, and you just listened to that and then turned it off. You didn't just leave it running because there's a battery and you didn't want to run it down. Rode a bus to school just like the kiddos now, and went to a little school of Lee Force. That's where I started school and finished there. I liked the little finishing school, and went back because I went to work, and I went back several years later and got a GED, and then have also had some a good life. Looking back, I don't remember us ever thinking of the hardships and stuff that we was having. Everybody, we walked a long ways to school, us kids. I don't remember how far, but it was like a mile or so to where the bus came. The bus wouldn't come through gates, and there's a gate there, and we'd walk to that gate every morning, and he'd let us out there to eat, and you'd walk back, you know. But we didn't have anything up. It'd be really cold in the winter. Well, we'd just walk up there and stand there and wait on that bus, and snowing and everything. We didn't think a thing about it, and I don't ever remember the folks taking us up there or coming and getting us. They just saying, you know, you just take off of the morning and go. But I boxed in school. We had boxing teams with the school then, and I used to go to Wellington all the time, tournaments, and we'd go to Wellington and Shamrock places, and they'd have 3-day tournaments where you'd stay there, families. They don't do that now. When a bunch of kids like y'all went to some y'all stay in a motel and eat in cafes or something now. Then families would agree to keep, like there'd be families agree to keep 2. And we'd just stay with them, and they'd feed you and everything. And the tournaments would be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we were fortunate, and most people get, you know, tarred or burned out on a deal, or like riding a horse. I started riding a horse in about 46, nearly every day, and I've rode one every day since, you know, and I still enjoy riding a horse and working a horseback, you know. You know, I guess the necessities, everything that we needed, we didn't, but we never did have any extra money to just, you know. I remember just a haircut was $0.25, you know, and go to town and get a haircut or something. But we'd go horseback to town and get a haircut. And us boys, when we was just little kids, I don't think people were as concerned or didn't think about something happening to you so much as they do now. And we didn't, you know, one thing, you didn't have the news media that you have, so we didn't hear about so many things happening, you know. I'm sure that they were things back then that happened, but we didn't have any way of knowing that, and nobody worried about somebody getting you or something. And if it cost a dime to go to the picture show, they'd take us to town on Saturday night to the picture show and just leave us, and we'd walk home that night, and it was several miles back to the ranch. We'd just walk out there, and they didn't think anything about us. Little kids doing that. Now you'd be afraid somebody would get us. Started the school, I think it's in '38 at Lee Force, and I finished the sophomore year and then went to cowboying. And then several years later, I went back and got a GED, and then I have about 750 classroom hours of law enforcement that I've had at accredited colleges, both Midwestern University and at VRJC. And I graduated in the Army. I have a certificate of graduation from a chemical, biological, radiological warfare school that I went to. And then I also went to a school in Iijima, Japan during that period for non-commissioned officers. But I also graduated from a short course in Austin for sheriffs and their deputies in 1960. I wasn't a sheriff or a deputy, but I was an inspector for the cattle raisers, and at that time I wanted to learn all I could learn about the deal, you know, and so I went to several schools like that I wouldn't have been compelled to.
I have a lot of respect for Boots and all he's done, and he's done a lot for me, and there's a lot of people that do respect him a whole lot, and he's just an all-around good guy and a good man, and I respect him a lot.
C.H. Long had a lot of influence on my life. He was a cowboy that a generation ahead of me that I worked with. He was born in King County in 1910, but he was an outstanding cowboy, but he had great morals and was a real honorable kind of a fellow, you know. And I think, looking back, that I was 16 years old when I went to work with him, and he was one of the leaders and kind of a boss at that time there. But he was 39 and had never married and was still just stayed at a wagon, you know. But he had a lot of influence on my life. And Tom Blasingame was another. He was just a cowman and a cowboy that not a famous guy about anything, but he just was an outstanding human being, you know, and honored, you know, his fellow man and that sort of thing. And as I grew older, I don't think I realized at the time I was working with them that they didn't mean that much to me, but as I look back, I remember little things or things that they did or the way they handled situations that I was impressed with. And Alan Jeffries was a brand inspector at Clarendon when I was growing up, and he was the one like them. He was just an outstanding individual and just a good man.
Another thing he's taught me is, instead of messing with a colt all the time and just messing with him constantly, just leave him alone and ride him, and everything will come together, and he'll eventually learn everything on his own without you having to teach him all the time and messing with him.
For instance, C.H. Long had an opportunity to make $17,000, which is not much money now, but at that time, I was working at that time for $1,180 a year. Now, that's not a month, a year. And so That's $90 a month, and we work 7 days a week, you know, from daylight till dark for 80 and 90 days at a time. And old Granddad Distilleries whiskey offered CH $17,000 to take his picture sitting on a horse and say CH Long drinks old Granddad whiskey. And he was working for about $150 a month then, and he had thought about it a lot and consulted with some people that he respected a lot, and decided to turn it down because he said that he didn't drink whiskey and he didn't want to entice somebody else to, you know. But I've always looked back and thought how many people would have took the money anyway, you know, whether they drank whiskey or not.
When I was younger, I'd be with my dad or something, and we'd be working or something. We'd come in and it'd be hot. And during the summer, I'd be tired and ready to go home. And Boots, he'd give me a couple of dollars and tell me to go to the supply house and get me a soda pop. And sometimes he'd even take me down there with him, and we'd sit on the bench in front of the supply house and drink Coke and eat a candy bar.
A saying CH had, when you're flanking calves, some of y'all will know, you've got a calf on the ground and he's trying to get up, and the bawling and the kicking, and some cowboy would slap him on the head or put his finger in his eye trying to make him and cuss him a little or something. CH would say, just hold him, don't classify him. And things like that. But all of them were just good, honorable men. And
some of the things Boots have taught me is to go slow and handle cattle slow, and don't get in a big hurry. You'll get just as much done as if you're taking your time, just as you will if you's hauling butt and going fast.
Just like that day that we were weaning, and he got on a green horse and he took off bucking, and Boots rode him for about 3 licks and then come off and landed right on his back. And he got up and he kind of hobbled around there for just a minute, and I didn't know if he was all right. And then the next day he come back and he was all wrapped up and stuff. But he went to work that next day, so I guess he was all right.
Hard work is good for any young people. I think that they learn a lot about discipline, and you have to have learn to deal with hardships and things that maybe you don't want to do, or you'd rather not be there, but you have to get up and do it. And to learn to do that, maybe the fortitude and staying qualities of a person that's got, you know, when you've had a job for many years, a lot of young people think, and we have that here, if it's distasteful or they don't want to do it, they want to quit and just start somewhere else. You can't, and you've got to just be able to buckle up and do it and think about. I've always looked at it like when we get through this evening and get in, it'll be warm, or everything will be fine when it's a real cold day or something. But I think for a young person, one of the great things that they can learn is to have a job and to honor it, regardless. You feel a little bad in the morning or something's happened that you don't want to go, to get up and go. You feel a whole lot better when you get in because you did do it. And
back then they had to be a lot tougher because they stayed on it year round, he said, and that's a long time to live on the wagon. And you know, and the only shower you got was a cold tank and stuff, and you know, probably got pretty boring out there 7 days a week. And nowadays you can go work all day and then drive in and go in your nice heated or air conditioned house and have a nice hot shower every night or whatever. And I think that's why so many people respect him, because he's been through all that and he did so good then, and now he does it the easy way and he still does everything good.
So many of our people now have had it real easy, you know, and I admire that, having these good lives and everything. But I think that they haven't learned to work. You have to learn to work. I think it's a learn, and to probably your parents have a lot of bearing on your young people that they get up and go when they don't feel good and everything, and a little kid at home sees that.
I like working with Boots a lot. He's a hand. He can ride. He can make horses ride like I don't. He's awesome with the horse, and he's good at dragging calves, and he does the cowboy way.
Most of my life, as we've said already, was just it worked. And I'd come in from school and go to work, and we'd have stuff to do, and we'd go to work, you know, when we got in. And I used to get up and harness a team of horses and haul some feed down to some cows, and then come back and get ready and go to school, you know. And I just can't imagine. That's probably one reason I didn't go any longer than I did. But I guess have to just kind of make the best of your deal the way it's been dealt to you, and do. I have no regrets. I've always thought that this had a lot of meaning in it. It was if y'all are familiar with Charles Russell, he was a turn of the century artist, cowboy artist, and one of the leading cowboy artists in the world, I guess, Charlie Russell. He born like 1860 and died in 26, you know, 1926. But I've always thought, he said that here's hoping the worst of my trail is behind me, and sickness and sorrow don't find me, and the good Lord is good to me from here to the end. And that's the Russell, but I think there's a whole lot in them 3 or 4 sentences. That's pretty good. But
he has a lot of stories to tell. He remembers all the details. He's a lot of fun when we get together, like at parties, and recently had my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And Boots has a toast or some type of coin to share for any occasion, and ready on the spot, and can usually make you laugh.
I took the words of an old cowboy song and changed them up 1 or 2 and added 1 or 2 and wrote that prayer that was on the back of his funeral paper. It says that they say there will be a great roundup where cowboys like dogies will stand, to be marked by the rider of judgment, and he's posted and he knows all brands. They say he won't ever forget you, and he knows every action and look. But for safety, you best make sure you've been branded and your name's in the Lord's tally book.
Because of all of those stories and all of those, that is how he has received the nickname, the Living Legend. Boots is our living legend.